Some people can look at someone else's life and feel genuinely happy for them. They can see promotions, relationships, milestones, trips, progress, and feel steady inside. I am not one of those people. And if you're listening to this, there's a good chance you aren't either. For you, comparison doesn't announce itself as jealousy. It arrives quietly. It shows up as a subtle tightening in your chest, a shift in mood you can't quite trace back to a single thought. You might even tell yourself you're fine, that you're just scrolling, that you're just observing, but something changes. Your breath gets shallower. Your energy drops. Your own life suddenly feels smaller than it did a moment ago, and you don't know why. So let's talk about comparison syndrome. Not the version that gets reduced to stop comparing yourself. Not the motivational quotes about staying in your lane. The real experience, the one that lives under your skin. Because this isn't about being insecure. It's not about being ungrateful, and it's not about wanting what other people have. It's deeper than that. At its core, comparison syndrome isn't driven by envy. It's driven by uncertainty. You're not focused on them. You're focused on what their life seems to say about yours. The fear underneath comparison isn't greed. It's invisibility. It's irrelevance. It's the quiet dread that you're falling behind in ways no one will stop to explain. You're not thinking, why don't I have that? You're thinking, what does it mean that I don't? And that question doesn't feel philosophical. It feels urgent. So comparison becomes a kind of measuring stick. Someone else's success isn't just success. It becomes a verdict. Someone else's happiness isn't just happiness. It becomes evidence. Someone else's timeline isn't neutral. It feels like proof you missed a step you were supposed to know about. Your mind doesn't ask, is this their season? It asks, what am I doing wrong? And that doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from fear, searching for reassurance. Psychology often calls this social comparison. The tendency to evaluate ourselves by looking outward. But that definition barely touches the experience. In plain language, comparison syndrome is your nervous system asking a survival question. Am I okay where I am? Am I safe here? Am I still worthy if I'm not ahead? And that instinct didn't begin with social media. Social media just gave it an endless supply of material. Long before algorithms, you learned, often quietly, that value could shift. That attention moved, that approval wasn't fixed. Maybe praise was scarce. Maybe success was celebrated loudly while effort went unnoticed. Maybe love felt conditional, even if no one intended it to. You might have learned that being impressive brought safety, that standing out reduced risk. That being ahead was better than being seen. No one had to sit you down and say, compare yourself. You absorbed it. Your nervous system created a rule. Track your position. Notice where others are. Adjust accordingly. So now comparison happens automatically. A colleague's promotion isn't just information, it becomes a question mark. A friend's engagement isn't just news, it becomes a reflection. A stranger's highlight reel isn't just content, it becomes a mirror, and your body responds before your thoughts do. That sinking feeling isn't pettiness, it's vigilance. Your system is constantly scanning. Who's moving forward faster? Who's being chosen? Who's being rewarded? And when you don't see yourself there, something inside tightens. So you compensate. You work harder. You push more. You raise the bar on yourself without realizing it moved. Or you pull back. You disengage. You convince yourself it doesn't matter. Both are attempts to regulate the same fear. Here's the part that often goes unnoticed. Comparison starts as a way to stay motivated, to orient yourself, to make sense of where you are. But over time, it erodes your connection to your own life. You stop noticing your progress because it doesn't feel fast enough. You minimize your achievements because someone else did something bigger. You delay satisfaction, telling yourself you'll feel good later, when you've earned it. You're always improving, but rarely resting. Always reaching, but rarely arriving. From the outside, you look ambitious, disciplined, driven. Inside, you feel restless, because peace requires presence. And comparison keeps pulling you out of the moment you're actually living. The emotional cost isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It's the joy that never fully lands, the compliment you dismiss, the milestone you rush past without letting it register. It's the constant feeling that something else should be happening by now. And that internal pressure is exhausting. Another layer people rarely talk about is how comparison disguises itself as responsibility. You tell yourself you're just being realistic, that you're holding yourself accountable, that complacency is dangerous. But sometimes that pressure isn't discipline. It's fear wearing a productive mask. If you stay dissatisfied, you stay moving. If you stay critical, you stay alert. If you never let yourself feel enough, you never risk falling behind. It feels like control. It feels like maturity, but it comes at a cost. Because your worth becomes conditional, based on visibility, based on timing, based on outcomes that depend on factors you can't control. And the more you compare, the more your inner world shrinks. You don't ask what you enjoy. You ask what counts. You don't ask what feels aligned. You ask what looks successful. Even your goals start to feel external, shaped more by what you see than what you need. Eventually, comparison stops being something you do. It becomes something you live inside. And when that happens, you start turning the pressure inward. Why can't I just be content? Why does this bother me so much? Why does it never feel like enough? You start diagnosing yourself, judging yourself, telling yourself you should be better than this. But here's the truth you rarely hear. You're not broken. You adapted to an environment where attention felt limited, where being seen felt competitive, where falling behind felt risky. That adaptation made you observant. It made you strategic. It made you capable of tracking patterns and progress. You notice details others miss. You understand systems. You're sensitive to context. Those are real strengths. The problem isn't your awareness. It's that your awareness learned to measure safety through comparison. Healing doesn't mean turning that awareness off. It means redirecting it. It doesn't mean pretending other people don't exist. It doesn't mean forcing gratitude until you feel guilty for noticing. It doesn't mean telling yourself you're wrong for feeling the way you do. It means teaching your nervous system a new reference point, that your timeline isn't a threat, that your pace isn't a failure, that progress doesn't require an audience. Safety doesn't come from being ahead, it comes from being anchored, and anchoring takes time, because your body doesn't stop scanning just because your mind understands the concept. It stops scanning when it learns you're not in danger where you are. So go gently. Notice when comparison activates. Notice how quickly admiration turns into pressure. Notice when curiosity shifts into self-judgment. That noticing isn't regression. It's awareness, and awareness is the beginning of choice. You don't have to eliminate comparison to heal. You just have to stop letting it define you. If this resonates more deeply than you expected, you're not alone. There are countless people quietly measuring themselves against lives they were never meant to live. And if you want more conversations like this, slow, honest reflections that name the patterns shaping how we see ourselves, you're welcome to stay. Understanding yourself isn't self-indulgence. It's how you finally stop evaluating your life from the outside and start inhabiting it from within.